Hello and welcome to The Entrepreneurs on Monocle Radio, the show all about inspiring people, innovative companies and fresh ideas in global business. Today's programme is all about smart urban developers and innovative real estate strategies. First, we'll hear about market adaptability and selecting competitive sites as we meet the founder of a niche developer.
We run a small business. Actually, I often call us the smallest developer in Hong Kong, but it's really hard to be that small in Hong Kong because the numbers are so big.
Then we'll explore the importance of community and connectivity for the transformation of city spaces.
We want to become the brand connecting the neighbourhood to the international travellers.
This is The Entrepreneurs with me, Tom Edwards. You're listening to The Entrepreneurs. Now, regular listeners to Monocle Radio may recall that a little earlier this year, in May, in fact, we headed to UBS's flagship Asian Investment Conference in Hong Kong. On the sidelines of that event, Monocle's Asia editor James Chambers and I caught up with Keith Kerr, the founder of The Development Studio, a boutique developer in the city with a focus on high-quality residential and commercial projects. Keith, a warm welcome.
Thank you.
Lovely to be here. Lovely to track you down. It sounds a little bit like there's been a few endeavours between you and James to meet up, and finally it happens, which is lovely.
Great.
And I guess we want to sort of pick your brains really about not just the projects you're doing now, but you've got a really interesting overview of some of the broader trends in the space in which you operate over recent years.
Yeah.
But bring us right up to speed. What do we find you doing these days? What's dominating the day-to-day, Keith?
Well, the day-to-day is we run a small business. Actually, I often call us the smallest developer in Hong Kong, but it's really hard to be that small in Hong Kong because the numbers are so big. So we're a team of about 15 people. We started back in 2009, originally with I had an executive assistant and a colleague, actually Alex, and we went from there. Initially, we got quite involved in some advisory work, which is not really my DNA, because people can ignore your advice, and I don't like being ignored. So we decided to really grab the bull by the horns and really be developers. So we did our first project. It was what we call a site assembly, putting together old flats and assembling a site. And that evolved into a project called 28 Aberdeen Street, which is in the Soho area. And that was very successful. It all sold. And since then, we've gone on to now handling 5 projects. 4 are residential, 1 is a commercial project, and keeping ourselves very busy in actually what has become, well, just recently, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, a more difficult market situation. So yeah, it's keeping us busy. We often joke we're very busy paying the bank's interest at the moment. So.
I mean, one of the many things that fascinates me about you is just how you managed to get that first start into the industry as an entrepreneur, because you spent so long at Swire, which is one of the big developers in Hong Kong, eventually being the CEO, but now you're a plucky entrepreneur. I mean, you left that huge company and started again and managed to get a foothold. Anyone who knows Hong Kong knows it's dominated by a number of tycoons who are all in property. But how did you find your square footage?
The space, yes, good question. Well, I was at Swire for 35 years, 35 very enjoyable years, I have to say. And yes, I was CEO for the last 20 of those years, which gave me a lot of exposure and experience, obviously. Swire, like a number of companies, and still does have a mandatory retirement age. And when I hit that ceiling, it was time to step away. But I felt it was far too young to hang up my boots and go play golf, because my golf isn't very good. My wife's is good, but not mine. So, no, I wanted to put my experience, my knowledge to good use, partly because I really love what I do. I have to say it sometimes takes longer to get things done than I would like, but I really do enjoy the process of real estate development. And the other thing was I sort of wanted to, it sounds rather grand, and I don't really mean it to sound too sort of patronizing, but pass on some of that experience to a younger generation. I have children myself, and they're not following my footsteps, but they're each finding their own way in life. So I thought, well, if I can't help them beyond education and paying a few bills occasionally, I'd engage with those that were involved in real estate. So we started off. My first colleague, as I said, was a personal assistant called Cherry, and then Alex, who's here with me today, join, and we've sort of gone on since then. And so, as I said earlier, we started off not intentionally, but being asked, I guess because I'd stepped away from Swire, I was an obvious person to go to for sort of consultancy type advice, because not many consultants are real developers, if I can put it that way. They have other roles, but they don't have that experience. So that was how it all started. Yeah, we raised some capital and put capital in, and fortunately, being of an age I have a little bit of capital to go with, and so we seeded things with that, and rounded up one or two very supportive co-investors, and went from there. We're still quite small on the Hong Kong scale of things, but as I say, we started with site assemblies, buying up old flats, renovating them for a while with a view to assembling the site. And now we run these 5 projects. So what we do, though, is we try and avoid direct competition with the big players. So to do that, how do we do that? Well, the first thing is to be very selective on the sites that we pick. So we're not running up against the mega developers in front, back, behind, and to the side of us. So we're very selective on sites. I've always had a strong interest in design, and luckily Alex also. So we do put a lot of effort into design, but not just design for its own sake, but functionality. Hong Kong, as you know, has very large flats sometimes, but has a lot of smaller flats. And we always try to make sure that they function as well as we can make them function. So that's sort of been our hallmark: avoid direct interface competition with the big players and try and carve out a niche with the design, the functionality. But we do start, as I emphasize, with site selection, and that's important because, like in the current market, which you'll probably ask me about in a minute or two, but a lot of the hot competition, if you like, is taking place where there are large amounts of supply. And if we were in those areas, we'd be caught right bang in the middle of it.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask you about that, because clearly, as you said, you have a wealth of experience and some very keen instincts that you've leveraged to build this latest chapter of success. But what happens when the prevailing economic climate is more challenging? It's less within your control, within your ambit of levers to operate, Keith, and you've alluded to it a couple of times. When times are trickier, what does that look like? Because I guess one has to be reactive, but you have to trust your judgment. Tell me a bit about those processes.
Yeah, well, when we started was 2009, and that was, of course, the global financial crisis. But as I said then, I say now, it wasn't global. It was a Western problem. It was primarily the United States, Europe. But Asia was relatively unaffected by that. And so, actually, it was helpful because we had a very good period when the market was fairly stable and growing. So that we weren't fighting fires, if I can put it that way. We might be fighting bureaucracy and time schedules and whatever, but we also had the benefit of very low interest rates. As you know, right after the global financial crisis, there was a lot of issuance of funds. And so it kept interest rates low for a very long period, and that gave us quite a lot of breathing space. And also, because rates were low, there was a search for yield, i.e. investors were looking for returns because they couldn't get anything on deposit with the banks. So that also meant a more fertile area for us to talk to partners. We don't have many, but it's all very personal. But at least it was a sort of good background against which we were working. That continued really very well. I mean, it's amazing when I look back. We went through all the social unrest, we went through COVID, and the market here was relatively robust, again, underpinned by quite low interest rates, strong demand, and so forth. But things started to go a bit awry when post-COVID, the growth economic recovery was a bit slower. And of course in China as well, as we know. I mean, their top-line numbers are very attractive, but I think there's enough evidence about what's happening, particularly the property market. So that's a bit of a pall over things. But of course, the real impact was on the interest rates. And when inflation ticked up, for whatever reasons, because of the dollar peg, then our interest rates followed. So that provided quite a challenge for us. So to get back to your question, we're busy sort of navigating those more difficult waters at the moment. I suppose it's fair to say that things have got a bit better this year. As you will probably know, the government first of all removed some very penal stamp duties, which were a dampener on demand. So that has certainly helped. The stock market, since the beginning of the year, has picked up. It's doing quite well. I mean, it's up and down a bit, but it went from, 15,000 to 18,000, touched 19, so forth. So that also raises confidence. And I think those things have sort of started to lift the bar. There was an exodus of people from Hong Kong, particularly, going to particularly UK with the B&O situation, but also other places. That, I wouldn't say stopped, but those numbers have come back very, very, very much. And there's quite now an influx of new talent. The government are very active on trying to bring in new talent, most from the mainland, of course, as you would expect, but also from other quarters. So that's also helping pick up demand, whether it's for rental, but at least for occupation of space. So all of that has sort of come together, I think, to start to help pick up sales volumes. It tends to be, as I was saying earlier, probably the pricing is very competitive, let me put it that way. Obviously, with improved volumes, it's natural for developers to want to shift inventory because it's been building up in this period of before when things were quite quiet. But the fact that volumes are up, they tend to be where there's quite large amounts of supply. So there's competition to try and move things on. But what it does do, it starts to create a base, I think, for the market. So if I put that against the other factors of, I was just saying about removal of the stamp duties and the population numbers sort of picking up again, tourist arrivals slowly picking up again, which helps. I think all of that sort of comes together to create a better base to move forward. I think also we're not active in the mainland property market, but as you well know, it gets very bad headlines at the moment and so forth. But I thought it was very significant that recently the Vice President, He Lifeng, made very positive statements about the importance of the market, property market, underpinning economic growth, social well-being, etc. I thought that was a very important statement coming from the mainland government, central government, about how important they see the property market. And hopefully that's a message that will also be understood here. It sort of clears any political hesitancy, about wanting to see a fairly active market, I think.
As you said, your developments are all in Hong Kong. You're not active on the mainland at the moment. But are you finding as a company you have to market yourselves more to mainland buyers? Given the shifts that you've alluded to, there's a lot more foreigners have left. The talent that's coming in is from the mainland. Your properties are on Hong Kong Island. They're in areas that you'd call expat, kind of Western expat areas. Are you having to adapt to how you market your properties to this new audience?
Well, I suppose that the mainland people were very active in the Hong Kong market previously, and they became less so because the mainland basically made moving money and so forth very much more difficult. So in a way that we've sort of, for a while anyway, went back to a more local market. I think even now it's still predominantly local, but there is now definitely movement from the mainland. I think a lot of the people, we found, for example, with our Aberdeen Street project, we sold something like about 40% to local Hong Kong Chinese and about 30% to mainland people who lived in Hong Kong with Hong Kong ID cards, i.e. permanent residents, and also then non-Chinese people like myself, I suppose. So that was good. It gave us quite a spectrum. I don't think we've had to do a major pivot. We're always mindful that the market is quite broad. It has been locally focused, but I think it's now opening up again. Obviously, the mainland is a huge place with a massive population, so for a small business like us, it's quite hard to reach out. We don't do road shows through Guangzhou and Hangzhou and Shanghai or whatever. We have to sort of basically focus on the people that are coming here anyway. So we fully recognize that and try and make that a target, but it hasn't caused a sort of major change. But we have got one project now finished and on sale and two coming up soon, so we're getting quite active. Luckily, during this very tough period, we haven't had too much to sell, but now we're starting to face that challenge ahead of us. So we're mobilizing to be much more active on the marketing side, both locally and where we can, reaching out across the boundary.
Keith, tell me about what's most exciting. It strikes me that you're one of those entrepreneurial folks for whom, the next project is always the most exciting thing on the horizon. I'm sure your team probably will recognise that tendency, but is that what the vigor with which you tackle your business day to day? Is it because you're just relentlessly excited about the next project, or do you have something in mind that's, I don't know, the epitome, the embodiment of the Keith Kerr sort of approach to doing things?
No, I don't think so. I think, life's a series of small steps, isn't it? And so, no, we right now, I mean, with conditions that are more difficult, obviously we've had to sort of bring in our horns a little bit. We haven't been too expansionist in terms of trying to buy things. First of all, there's not necessarily a lot for sale because, generally people, if things are down, they'll try and sit on their assets. So that's one thing. So not a lot of really good opportunities, and that's happened in the past. People set up funds to capitalize on things after the global financial crisis. I don't think they could buy anything. There's nothing for sale. People generally, because of low debt levels, this is a bit of a broad generalization, but they'll sit on assets and wait for things to recover. And so it's not like we've been inundated with fantastic opportunities. We still, of course, keep an eye open. But no, right now we're focused. We've got 5 projects. There are 4 of them, as you said, on Hong Kong Island. One is actually on the edge of Kowloon City. So we've ventured there. That is still in very early stages. We're in demolition, about to go into foundations. But no, I think we just have to take each day as it comes and fight for survival and hopefully an improvement in the market, as I was sort of trying to lay the foundation for just now. And I hope convincingly.
And where are we on that curve? I mean, have we hit rock bottom in Hong Kong? Are we on the way up? Because there's been so much attention on the mainland developers, trying to pick the next domino to fall. Not so much attention on the Hong Kong ones.
Right.
I mean, Can you see one of the big property developers here going under, or is it already looking better?
No, I don't see that at all. Obviously, as I said earlier, those with inventory that is backed up because of slower sales are looking to move that inventory on, and they may do so at small profits, break even, or losses. But I don't think those are threatening the underpinning of the companies here. They've had 50 years of growth, more or less, and they've got, generally speaking, good balance sheets and so forth. No, I think, as I was saying earlier, some of the fundamentals that are now falling into place, the removal of stamp duties, the pickup in the stock market, the stopping of the exodus of people and arrival of new people, all those sort of things, and as I say, political support, as I put it, from the mainland, are all sort of beginning to draw a line, I hope. This is my personal view, under the market. What's missing are 2 things. One, of course, is still interest rates, because the peg are still at the higher end of things. So there was hope earlier in the year, as we all know, for a reduction in rates. It hasn't yet happened. The speculation as to when that will be, I don't know any better than anybody else, but I hope that we'll start to see some tracking down in rates in probably Q3, Q4. Obviously, it depends on inflation rates in the US and the job numbers. Those are the 2 things the Federal Reserve has to focus on. And the peg has generally served Hong Kong extremely well. So no suggestion of doing anything about it, but it does have this consequential effect. So if rates start to track down, the other issue that would help, and the other issue is that there are quite large supply numbers. And so it will take a while, I think, for the market to consolidate as that supply starts to get moved on through sales. And if interest rates come down, and then I think we would start to become quite cautiously optimistic about things. So I'm hoping we're about there now, and the rest of the year and next year will start to pick up. But who knows?
Is it possible to break the cycle in Hong Kong? Because pre-COVID, we were always talking about Hong Kong's super hot property market and how prices were going up and up and up and up and up, and the government needed to do something to cool those prices. They bring in these measures, they bring in stamp duty, and now we're talking about it going down and down and down and down and down, and we want them to remove those, which they have. Is it just going to go up and up and up again? And then in a few years' time, we're going to be talking about what we were, properties that no one can afford, government come and do something. Is it just going to go round and round?
I hope it's not as dramatic as that. I hope it's a much more gradual growth. I mean, obviously, as a developer, I'd like to see the market pick up. I mean, that's obvious. But no, I think several administrations have put a lot of emphasis on increasing supply. The solution to this problem is basically to increase supply over time on a long-term basis. If supply shoots up or shoots down, that's what creates the sort of volatility in the market, which isn't good. As you know, the previous chief executive, Carrie Lam, announced the Northern Metropolis, that's a huge swathe of land in the northwestern New Territories that is next to China, and that side of Hong Kong is got great links to the mainland. So I think that gives ample opportunity for a steady supply in the market going forward. So I think if I put that in the future, plus the existing supply of completed or nearly completed properties, I don't see some huge spike up in prices. No, I think we're consolidating. I think the pickup will be gradual. And hopefully it'll be balanced by a more steady supply. I mean, developers have been advocating the government pretty well consistently for the last 30 years to actually allow us to get on with our jobs and build. Whereas I think sort of what I would call slightly artificial measures to control demand and so forth, they have consequential effects. The real solution would be to improve supply, improve quality, and basically get better housing across the board for everyone, whether it's private or, of course, public housing. So, no, I'm not anticipating major volatility. I could be wrong, but in the medium term, I'm thinking we'll be reasonably steady and hopefully slow growing upwards.
That was Keith Kerr, the chairman and founder of the Development Studio, speaking to me in Hong Kong on the margins of the UBS Asian Investment Conference. If you want to find out more about Keith's vision, head to thedevelopmentstudio.com. You're listening to The Entrepreneurs. Hakan Kodal is the founder and chairman of Ando Living, a brand of serviced apartment developments that mix business and leisure and help forge community connections in historical city centres across Europe. With 25 years of experience in real estate under his belt, Hakan moved to Portugal in 2016, recognising the significant investment opportunity. 3 years later, he and his co-founders launched Ando Living to create neighbourhood-centric accommodation that connects international travellers with local communities. I caught up with Hakan to hear about the impressive portfolio of properties. He began by telling me why he and his colleagues chose to start with Lisbon city centre.
Well, it's a combination of two things. One is we're talking all mostly Mediterranean cities, Lisbon, Porto. Now we're looking to Athens, Istanbul, and hopefully soon in Madrid and Sevilla to start with. All these Mediterranean cities have some similar background. So most of them have history, historical city centers, so attracting a lot of tourists. But what has happened in those cities, there has been a lot of conversions and neighborhoods started to change, attract more and more international, not just visitors, but with pandemic, a lot of remote working started, digital nomads, people moving from one place to another. So those cities started to become more international than ever. That's why our brand, Ando Living, is born in Lisbon, and there's a reason for that.
I love the centre of Lisbon, Hakan. Tell me why that was the perfect place for you guys to start.
When we started to look to Lisbon city centre, it wasn't developed yet in 2016 and 17. So this has given us a big opportunity to be able to develop the city centre. And we have had some background of also developing neighborhoods, not just in terms of real estate, but doing a lot of entertainment, arts, design events, attracting thousands of people. Because we know that the city center, historical city center, were left apart from most of the real estate developments in the past. But the Mediterranean has a big potential. So we decided to first start with Lisbon city center. Today, we have over 10 different locations already open. And we have, with our non-branded arm, Love Estate, together, now we're managing 1,400 serviced apartments in Portugal only. Most of them are in Lisbon. So to get into several locations gives us the chance to embrace the neighborhood. So that's how this neighborhood focus started in 2019. And what was the missing part of that was this component, not just an apartment to stay or live, but connecting international travelers with locals alike. So we decided to do clubhouses in these historical city centers to attract more locals so that the travelers can meet people alike. That was the idea. That was the missing point in the service apartment business, because most of the brands are pure concentrated on apartments, furnished apartments, or private rental market there, but there's nothing connecting the visitors or the guests to the local community. That's why we wanted to become the brand connecting the neighborhood to the international travelers. And we look to, once we have developed the brand in Lisbon, after 3 years, in 2022, we decided to look to other international cities, which were the main character with the similarities. And then we decided to expand. And now we have 6 clubhouses under development or construction in Portugal. 3 of them are in Lisbon. Now we have a clubhouse under construction in Istanbul, hopefully soon in Athens and Madrid. We're also going to London. In those cities, we feel that there's still this neighborhood living, not like in big cities, like in the US or in Dubai, etc. Europe has his particularities. And I think connecting travelers to locals alike, I think that's the mission and the brand's motto. So Ando Living is your neighborhood wherever you go, so that you can find different alternatives in this neighborhood, but at the same time have a clubhouse connecting you to the local community. That's how we have selected a number of cities to be able to reproduce the same offer, where we believe there's no other brand offering such.
Hakan, how do you ensure you're in the vanguard of great neighbourhood building? Tell me about the places you go, what you like to do. At Monocle, we often say it's about making sure you can be trusted to enjoy a drink late at night, to loosen your tie, have some fun, not take life too seriously. But what are some of your secrets?
Our clubhouses aim to be the heart of the neighborhood. So we're not aiming to develop these clubhouses just for tourists, but it's more, the heart of our concept lies in our clubhouses. So those clubhouses are usually trophy buildings in a location where locals alike will come and spend, not just for having a drink or lunch or dinner, but at the same time, they can come to, we have some cool working spaces. They can come for a breakfast to meet people. We have a concept store with especially pushing the cooperation with local artists and designers and local food, so that there is a takeaway option, and not just for the food, but also some local designer items in go. So we're planning to partner with in each neighborhood or in each city to promote the local community, and especially to give the best practices, to organize events with the international and local community, and to have some ateliers to mix up this community, so that this place is not just a restaurant and a bar, but it becomes the neighborhood's attraction and a destination, so that the international travelers or travelers simply, when they go into our clubhouse in any Ando, in any city, they know this is the place to be connected to the local community. So that's the main aim. And to do so, we are, for example, in Lisbon, we are now 3 clubhouse projects. And each clubhouse project, we're partnering with a restaurant operator which has a knowledge of the local market, so that each clubhouse offers a great food alternative, so that it is not a copy-paste of the same offer in each city, so that the city clubs brings a local community, local taste, and connecting to the local community, promoting local artists and designers, so that becomes a more community project, so that you think about traveling. What we want to offer is that the stay component is very diversified, so you can choose your stay component, which means the walking distance to the clubhouse will probably have 10 different buildings at the walking distance. It's like houses, simply. But the clubhouse will be the connecting point, so that everybody will join as much as they want. But they know that wherever in each international city in the Mediterranean, and hopefully soon in London, when they go to a clubhouse of Ando, so they're sure that this is the best place recommended by locals. So that's a bit tricky. So the diversification creates, at the same time, attraction, but making sure that we have the brand component elements just repeated the same way, so that we have some brand pillars, which means warm, welcome, connecting to the local community, and feeling in your neighborhood like you have a friend advising you in this neighborhood. So to position the brand so that the community builds the brand without us trying to build a community. And hopefully we'll be in most of the European cities in the next 5 years.
That was Hakan Kodal, founder and chairman of Ando Living, and you can find out more about the brand by heading to andoliving.com. And that's all for this episode of The Entrepreneurs. We'll be back at the same time next week. Do look out for Eureka, available every Friday. The programme was produced by Laura Kramer, with audio editing by Tamsin Howard. You can listen again and find out more about the show at monocle.com. Or you can follow us and browse the archive via your preferred podcast platform. If you'd like to contact the team, email Laura on lrk@monocle.com. I'm Tom Edwards. Goodbye, and thanks for listening to The Entrepreneurs.